Welcome to the True Detective Podcast. We're the Lorehounds, your guides to the weirdness of the long night. I'm David.
I'm John, and this is our coverage for Season 4, Episode 2 of True Detective Night Country on HBO Max.
We're going to start off with our spoiler-free hot takes, and then after a quick break, we will get into a full scene-by-scene breakdown of the episode.
We've got press screeners this season, so we are posting these podcasts right after the episodes have aired every Sunday night at 10 p.m. ET. However, we want to enjoy the mystery of the show along with everyone else, so we're only recording one episode ahead. We're usually recording on Wednesday nights.
This means you can send in your feedback each week. Send in your emails to truedetective@thelorehounds.com or head over to the contact page on our website and use the form or record us a voicemail. Also, join us on our Discord where we've got a full channel set up to discuss just True Detective. Links for all of that stuff is in the show notes.
Check us out on Patreon if you want. Subscribers get early and ad-free access to our podcast, but also for True Detective especially, you get a customized detective's notebook that David has come up with. Everyone who sees it is blown away by it. So I'm telling you, you want to see this thing. It's really cool. It's interactive. I could see this being officially from HBO. It's that good.
It's kind of fun. I'm nerding out.
I could tell.
Well, if you want some more information about our Patreon or our upcoming programming schedule, check us out at the end of the podcast. We push all that stuff to the back so we can get right to the episode.
Cool. David, what did you think about this episode before we head into spoiler territory?
I'm kind of, as I was structuring my feedback this week, it ended up being sort of in two camps. There's the production stuff that's going on with this season, and then there's the story stuff that's going on with this season.
Mm-hmm.
So on the production side of things for episode 2, I really appreciated the fact that they just moved us right along. You know, they just pushed everything forward on all fronts. We're moving out. We've got a couple of mainline new characters. We've got deepening of the mysteries. We've got answers to some questions that are posing questions to more answers that we don't have. So I really felt that certain key details were paid off, and that was really good. So that feels satisfying as a viewer. Just like, hey, we're moving. Like there's progress here. I'm really impressed by the efficiency of the storytelling overall, the world building, the way that they trust the audience to just get it. Like, we don't need a POV character that's walking around when they walk in someplace and then somebody says to them, well, the thing you need to know about Detective Danvers is blah, 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 blah. Right? No, it's like we're right in the middle of these relationships. We're right in the middle of the stakes of these relationships. And they trust the Issa Lopez trusts us enough to just get it. We're all human being enough to understand, oh, those two people have beef, right? Or, those two, there's something going on over there, So I really appreciate that when a show can treat us like adults,
Yeah, definitely.
I think they're doing a really good job in making a world feel like what I imagine Alaska to be like. The shops, the buildings. I guess they filmed this in Iceland, and there's a interview with Issa Lopez talking about how Iceland was just more set up because there's a lot more film industry happening in Iceland on a regular basis.
Oh, interesting.
So they were able just to pick up and go and start filming. But anyway, it feels like I imagine Alaska would feel like, and that can be a really hard thing to pull off. And so I just really appreciating all of that production detail.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is similar to, you and I have both lived in New York City for a significant periods of our lives.
Yeah.
I wonder how similar it is to they got New York right if you've been to New York a couple times.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly,
yeah.
There was one show a while back where there was a character that was slow walking around New York City, and I was like, nope, not it. Moving on. This show it was the one about those audio tapes. The guy who was doing the audio tape mystery thing. It was kind of one of those
I don't know,
horror things. I can't remember now. But anyway, and I've lived overseas, and I've lived in remote areas, and so I got the authenticity of the vibes that they're laying down in just a general sense. So I just really appreciated that. I think the casting is working well. Jodie Foster is just a beast. Callie Reese is amazing. I can't believe that this is like her first big show like this.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah, John Hawkes is amazing as Pryor. His in show, or I'm sorry, I'm not thinking about his in show son, but I was thinking about Fiona Shaw. She's great. She brings a lot of gravity. Eccleston, right? He's showing up.
Eccleston, I did not recognize for
not at all
many scenes.
Not at all,
because he's just so different from how we're used to seeing him.
And there's one scene in this episode with Hawks and Bennett. That's Finn Bennett is the guy who plays Pryor's son, the younger Pryor. There's a scene in this.
The Pryor.
No, the Pryor Pryors.
Sorry, actually, it's the latter Pryor. Okay, all right, go on.
The younger and there's a scene. There's a scene that is so emotionally loaded in this between those two characters, and the acting was phenomenal. Just blew my socks off. I was like, wow, these guys are bringing it. And so I'm really impressed across the board. The time dilation with it being the long night and what is day and what is night, like you walk into a cafe and a bunch of people are sitting around and you're like, is this lunch or is this after work drinks? I don't know what's going on here. And so it really has a nice disorienting effect on the whole development of the plot. I love how the music is being used, especially the diegetic music. That's music that you hear in world. So if somebody's listening to the radio in their truck or something like that, and then we pan back out and it changes quality and it now becomes the ambient background music, and we come in and out both directions.
I love when they do that. Yep.
It's amazing. And I've heard some interviews with Issa Lopez. She sounds amazing. She's so confident and so clear of her vision. So I feel like we're in really good hands from that production side of things. Like really well thought out story, lots of great Easter eggs, lots of connectivity to things. It's a whole world, and it's just being confidently presented. So that's great. On the story side of things, it's really interesting to be in the position that we're in, where we're just a little bit ahead of everybody else. So watching and listening to all the theories that are being crafted and the different lines of inquiry that the hive mind is going down. And it's really hard to bite my tongue, but it's also, I'm like really excited because I can't wait for people to see certain things, or like I've seen a couple times where people are spot on about something and I just want to shout, yes, you got it right. But we can't. It would be rude even if it were legally allowed, right? I wouldn't want to do that anyway. But it's interesting to see the theories that are out there. There's some good ones. There's some not so great ones. I think with the density of the storytelling, there's a lot more story ahead of us. So even all of these theories, people, I've cracked the code. I know exactly what's going to happen in the story. You may have a tail of it or you may have a piece of it, but I think there's a lot more yet for us to discover. And I think Issa Lopez is a much more crafty storyteller. So I don't think what's apparent for us on the front is going to be so simplistic on the backside.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I think you're absolutely right there. I think that this story has legs where it could, you could find out the killer of the original group in the next episode. I don't know. I haven't watched it yet, so trust me, I'm not spoiling right now. But we could find this out in episode 3, and there could still be story after that. So I think that would be really cool if they, like I say, I've been saying this in every podcast we're doing about this. This is the second one. I've been saying this in our podcast about this. I like when a mystery box show gives you little wins so that the bigger wins feel earned.
Yeah. 100%.
And I hope that they do that in this season.
And it feels like after episode 2, I feel like that.
I agree. I was telling you that I was much happier with this episode than the last episode.
Yes. A lot of world building in one to on-ramp us, but she's now confidently moving us forward. And that said, it feels like there's sort of 3 major lines of inquiry that the hive mind has seems to be aggregating around. And so we'll talk about those in the scene-by-scene breakdown. But it feels like there's some good theories out there, and we'll try to reflect those from what we're picking up from the other podcasts and the Reddits and the Discords and all that stuff. There are also in this episode major major tiebacks to season 1, huge things that are directly connected. Now, the question will be, are these determinative? Can I say that word?
Sure. You could try.
Or I did, and I think I failed. Or are they just Easter eggs? And are they just some, the showrunners and HBO having a little fun and extending a little branding, weaving it in a little bit? But we'll talk about them when we get there. But they are major hooks, and I don't know. I'm so far I don't feel put off by any of them. They seem to be reasonably appropriate.
Cool.
What about you?
I thought it was great. I thought that it was, the first episode, I think I expressed to you, I'm a little nervous that the show isn't for me, kind of thing. I don't usually pick up shows like this. This is not really my jam usually. And I was a little bit put off by
jam
the
on your muffins.
excessive. Sure. I was a little bit put off by the excessive world building of episode 1. And I still think that it was a little bit clumsy. I still think that episode 1 was not superb, although a lot of people loved it a lot more than me. So again, could just not be my kind of show. But then episode 2 came and I said, I think this is my kind of show, because I said this to you on the Discord, and I said, write that down because I got to say it on the air, which is, you got to take a lesson.
Yeah, it's here. I've got it highlighted for you.
You know what? I'm sorry, but it's from this episode. It's one line. You got to take a lesson from Danvers and ask the right questions. And I think the problem with episode 1 is that the show was making me ask the wrong questions. It was making me ask what? It was making me ask, what is happening?
Interesting.
What is this person doing?
Right.
What did this, what happened here? Where is this? All these factual questions. What a good mystery box makes you do is ask why.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what this episode made me do. This episode gave me a lot of factual answers and not a lot of reasoning answers, not a lot of analytical answers. And that's what I want to be curious about, not, well, what factually happened,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad that this episode did a much better job of that. I thought that, they had a great pacing where things were answered, more questions were raised, where different characters felt like they had a minute to shine instead of just jumping from one to another.
We're deepening some of the relationships. We're getting more into the dynamics.
Right. Even when they, showed a new character.
Right.
I didn't feel like it took away from the other characters that we've already met. I thought that it sort of added to the dynamic rather than subtracted. It was additive. It was greater than the sum of its parts, if you will.
Right.
So overall, I'm really, really pleased with this episode.
And the ending just was a punch.
Yes.
was amazing.
Yeah.
It really braced me, and it answered and opened up like we've been talking about. It collapsed down a whole bunch of things, and then suddenly the world became much bigger than we could have possibly imagined.
Yep.
And that's a really great hallmark of noir style. I mean, I know noir's got some different meanings, and I probably talked about this before, but this idea that, well, there's a literature genre called hard-boiled, right? And that's where typically a lawman, or police officers, law enforcement, whatever, or the main character, they know this world, they know how to deal with this world. They can punch as hard as anybody can punch them, right? They can punch back as hard as anybody can punch them.
Mm-hmm.
And they understand the stakes, and they understand how things operate. In noir, one of the elements of noir is that the protagonist encounters a world beyond them that they didn't understand or see or were unaware of. And suddenly they don't have the rules to the game anymore. They're playing a different game, and they don't know what that game is. And so that's part of the exploration is learning, how this world works and what really has gone on. And so it just gave me chills. The end of this episode gave me chills because it did just that. It took the world, and we were like, oh, we can understand this world. Great. It's all working out. And then it flipped it inside out like some weird origami art thing. And it suddenly became an entirely different thing. And that was exciting and exhilarating.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm done monologuing.
Cool. We are 15 minutes into this podcast, and we've yet to go into the actual episode. So I think it's time we do that. Why don't we take a quick break? When we get back, we'll go into full spoiler territory. And we're back. David, what do we have to talk about before we talk about this episode?
Just two things really quick. I wanted to make a mention that I am listening to a lot of the other podcasts that are out there. A lot of people are covering this. There's a couple of good ones on The Ringer, Bald Move, Post-Show Recaps, Vanity Fair. Everybody's got, coverage on this thing. So I'm listening to a lot of those. I'm also listening to the official podcast, and they have a host, Alice. I'm going to pronounce her middle name incorrectly. Connick, I think it is how it's pronounced, Glenn. And she's a member of the Alaskan Indigenous community and is a podcaster already. So I just want to highlight the fact that HBO did the right work. They went out, they found somebody who's qualified in both culturally and from a perspective and a point of view, as well as a professional podcaster, and brought them in to be the co-host or the main host of the HBO official podcast. So if you're into the background material and stuff, it's great. Go check it out. It's really well produced. But I'll be keeping all of that stuff in the back of my head and just dropping little things here or there, making sure that we reference when we are picking up clues from other different sources. But I think that's about it. Otherwise, I think we can get into the scene by scene now.
Very cool.
Okay.
All right. Bring us in, David.
So we start with the cold open. This episode is about an hour and 2 minutes long. And I think all of these are directed by Issa Lopez herself, and it's certainly written by her. So, and it's cold. It's a cold open. Danvers and young Pryor examine the bodies in the ice, and Liz gets real with her staff. Navarro and Rose talk, and Angie asserts that the scientist bodies are tied to the Annie K case. Navarro stumbles on the folded clothing of the missing men. Not all of the frozen men are dead. This was terrifying. I don't know what you thought at the end of the scene. It freaked me the hell out.
That freaked me out too. I was like, I was actually feeding my son. So my son was asleep in my arms.
Traumatized him.
He's a baby. And he's if you're new here, I have a baby, and he is asleep in my arms, and I jump when I'm watching it. I have my head to the side.
Oh,
he's
no.
asleep on me, and I like jump for a second, and he didn't wake up or anything, but I was
that's
like,
good.
oh man, that could have gone bad.
So what it reminds me of is The Thing, and Issa Lopez is on record saying that Aliens and The Thing and a number of other shows, TV and movie shows, serve as inspiration for her. So if you haven't seen The Thing, this definitely feels like something out of The Thing for me. And there was even the little Easter egg in episode 1 where the Thing video cassette was in a couple of shots.
Well, the thing is, I'm glad I was wearing headphones when I
when you jumped.
when I watched this.
And it was a really great needle drop too, because we went from the scream straight into the Billie Eilish song. And it really, I've talked about this before, especially when we were covering Andor back in the day, where you can use the energy coming out of one scene to push you forward into another scene.
Yeah.
And so having that scream meld with the song and just needle drop us straight into the opening really does a lot of that vibe work for us. I think it's really good.
Cool.
So we see the spiral on the forehead.
Yes.
Right. So
which is connected later with the Annie K thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. With the tattoo and the thing on the ceiling. And of course that all goes back to season 1, the spiral in season 1 as a symbol for nefarious things happening. We're not going to get into the plot details of season 1, but we'll just reference them so people who know.
Okay, I buy it.
Interesting too about all of the stuff that's going on with the corpsicle. I believe that's what it's officially called. That's what Danvers calls it, the corpsicle. And
I'm in. That's a good name for it. As good a name as any.
That's right. I believe Issa Lopez actually coined that, or somebody on set coined it, and then it carried over and then became part of the script. I believe that's the right. I could be wrong.
Pretty funny.
I think that's right. but about burnt corneas, ruptured eardrums. Obviously, they're shrieking in horror. They're sort of recoiling from something. So a really strange scene. And I heard Joanna Robinson on the Prestige podcast on The Ringer use a reference Haram. I cannot say it now. Bosch. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, not at
Hieronymus
all.
Bosch. Oh God. So yeah, you have to look up. Even if you misspell it, it should find you right on Google. A style of painting, a style of art from. It's not medieval, but I'm not sure the time period. But these really fantastical drawings of hell and torture and crazy stuff. And so a lot of people are comparing the Corpsicle to drawings and paintings from H. Bosch. I'll say it that way.
Nice. The folded clothing you bring up.
Yes.
In your outline here, I see. I don't know what it is, but I think we kind of get a hint by the end of it, right? Because we have another person who has escaped. We know by the end of this.
Right.
Or perhaps committed these atrocities.
And what's weird and interesting is I think Navarro says later that it's not even there, or maybe it was Danvers. We'll get to that scene, that it's not even, doesn't even seem to be like their clothes, or it's not a complete set of clothing for all of them.
Right. Yeah. They're missing some of the clothing. So I guess, could some of it still be on them at all?
We don't. Yeah. Not until they completely melt the whole thing will we know. Because we don't see any at this stage. And even as it's melting, we don't see any.
Tell you what, I think that the extra guy folded the clothes and then said, wait, I don't have any clothes. Took one piece from each person and said, all right, I'm good. I got an outfit now. Two shoes, pants, shirt, hat. I'm good.
Hat. All right. So we drop from this scene straight into the opening credits. And from what I hear in the ether is that this opening credit sequence has a ton of clues embedded in it. And I've yet to do a frame by frame analysis of it. I was kind of waiting for the Reddit detectives to do that. But apparently that if maybe it's the kind of thing where you just watch the opening credit every time. And, with that repetition, we'll start to pick up more and more of the clues, or we'll see certain scenes that have been filmed or stuff like that. So,
yeah, Westworld kind of had that too. And I liked that.
Totally.
But also, I don't want to figure it out before we get there because I want to be surprised. So I kind of don't want to do a microanalysis. I do think that, this show is designed to be inspected under a microscope.
Totally.
But sometimes you can go too far down the magnifying lens and kind of ruin it for yourself.
And then you find a Markley.
Well, I think it's not even that. I think the way you ruin the show for yourself is if you get so convinced of one theory and then it's a different thing. Just don't be convinced of one theory. Just be open to change. That's how you keep yourself sane on a show like this.
Absolutely. Theory is a theory until you start it to amass data points and actually can rely on it. Otherwise, you just gotta be loose with them, right? They're just fun. We're just trying on different clothes in the mirror. Oh, how does this fit? How does that fit?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So we get two combined scenes that are intertwined with each other. So the first up is Danvers and the school teacher, Bryce. So Danvers talks on the phone with a nurse about the status of the living guy. And then she walks into a class at the local high school where she dismisses the students so that she can talk to Bryce, the local geology teacher, about what the Salal research station was up to. So interesting, they say on the phone call with the nurse that they're going to have to amputate the leg and the guy is in an induced coma.
Yeah. That's pretty rough.
Yeah. I mean, he was a corpsicle and now he's alive.
Yeah.
So yeah, please keep me in an induced coma. That's
wow.
Fine.
Yeah. As far as the way that she's reacted to when she walks into a room, have we ever seen anyone pleased to see Liz Danvers?
Not yet. No. Not by a long shot.
Even young Pryor, I think he admires her, but I think he's exhausted by her.
And we definitely get some of that a little bit later.
Do
where
you know
he's trying to stay in her good graces.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Parks and Rec? I can never remember.
No, I was never really a Parks and Rec person.
There was this whole thing about, Leslie Knope being a steamroller, and her friends all love her because she's so sweet and she'd do anything for them, but she is a steamroller and she drags people into anything that she's doing. I feel like Danvers is that without the sweetness. Danvers wouldn't do anything for you.
No sweetener in that cup of coffee. Absolutely not.
Danvers will steamroll you, but if you need your driveway shoveled, she's not coming.
Nope. Nope. She's the chief. And it's a good thing that she's in charge, because otherwise she would have a rough go of it with having a boss above her that she's not in a relationship with.
Right. But I think the point is, they say a bunch of times, well, I give you a promotion.
Right.
He says that. I think what he did was, and I could be wrong, but I think what Christopher Eccleston's character did is he put her in charge of people because he knew that she cannot work under somebody. And she's still finding a way to kind of work under him.
Right.
And undermine him, even though they're in different departments now.
I've got some additional thoughts when we get to that scene. We can break that relationship down a little bit more, because there is a lot going on there. That's pretty interesting. And not unlike Eccleston, she obviously consumed Bryce pretty well. I mean, this guy seems like a pretty, he's the stereotypical frustrated high school teacher, right?
Yep.
But she walks into the room and he's recoiling in fear. Not fear. That's not the right way to say it, but he's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here?"
I think dread.
That's
dread
it.
Is
That's
better. Is the word.
Yeah. She consumed him at some point. She just sucked his soul. And she was so mean to him. She what does she call him? A dork or a nerd or something like that? And she's like, speak English nerd or something.
Yeah. I just, yeah. Why do you go to the English teacher? Well,
that's rough. That is rough. So,
yeah.
So we learn a little bit more about Salal. They were madmen, reclusive. They didn't come to town, no visitors, didn't rotate staff. So that sort of lends credibility to the question of what was Salal doing out there. And they seem to be a secretive group, and they're not a normal research station that would rotate staff and scientists out on a regular basis. And we also get the drop that it's decades of work, about 18 years of sequencing DNA of a microorganism that could potentially stop cellular decay, among other things. So this is one of the major lines of inquiry that the Reddit detectives are working on, which is, did one of these ice core samples or the organism that they were working on, get out? Is it doing something? Is it spreading? Right. We've got some great feedback when we get to the feedback section on this theory as well. So it ties in nicely with all of our pandemic related topics like The Last of Us and other shows.
Yeah.
So
I could see them awakening that in the ice. But my question is this the part where they say that was never going to work because the friction from drilling would get rid of, So
and there was cellular disruption, like the DNA gets ruptured by the ice as well. But he also talks about the mechanics of the drilling as well.
Yeah, I mean, I buy it. That's the part that made me start thinking of The Last of Us.
Okay, right.
Yeah. Also, at a certain point, I'm waiting for Christopher Eccleston to put on a leather jacket and whip out a sonic screwdriver and be like, "Stop drilling into the earth! You're going to cause a problem. There's aliens down there." He's putting on his Northern English accent, and he's back as the Doctor.
Exactly, perfect. A great way to end the sequence, the season.
That's the twist. I just solved
exactly. You did. All right, so this scene was then sort of combined and intertwined with Angie and Rose talking about the last time Rose saw Travis alive and about the nature of the dead. And all of this is set to Song to the Siren, Take 7 by Tim Buckley, which is playing in the background at Rose's house. It's both diegetic and contextual, or I forget what they call the other non-diegetic music.
Whatever you
So
want to call it. I don't think there is a word. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
But
I don't know if there's a term. Yeah, there must be, but
no, I think there maybe embedded.
mm,
Maybe one day we'll know.
maybe the internets will tell us. So
Yeah, right in.
what did you think of this scene? Because there's some big stuff happening here, but it's all very subtle.
The Travis being dead and being alive and being all around, that's so spooky to me, and
Uh-huh.
that is one of the things that most interests me about this season so far. Like, sure, I want to know how the people died in the corpsicle, but I don't know. I'm kind of more interested in Rose and Travis so far.
Uh-huh. Did you pick up on any of the details of Travis himself? Did any of those details stick?
Not really, but I see that you have it
In the outline
right here as a major season 1 connection.
Yeah. So this is pretty big confirmation to me that Travis is Rust Cole's father. So the main Matthew McConaughey's character from season 1. I'm pretty sure I am pretty sure. I haven't talked to anybody else about this theory yet, but this is Travis's father. And there's been a bunch of internet sleuthing going on, possibly connecting. I missed it, but apparently the name Travis was mentioned in season 1. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So this is straight up. It fits all of the biographical and timescale details. So I think we can just leave it at that and let everyone else enjoy it unfolding if you don't already know, or if you do know, go back and binge watch season 1 again, for the 50th time. But yeah, it's pretty big connection here.
Cool.
Interesting that the Rose and Travis were just buddies, of various types. They were, close friends, but not married.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of tracks. It feels all right. I also love the big picture window that they're sitting in front of, and there's this black night out there with this swirling snow, and so it felt very much like a starscape.
Yeah.
Looking out into the blackness, into the cosmic horror of it all, the vast unknown, where we're infinitesimal and in the face of this giant cosmic existence.
Yeah, I think you've highlighted it in the outline here too, but the nature of the dead conversation is really the highlight of this scene, and it's one of the better, I would say, monologues or lines of dialogue in this episode. Which was, it felt so ominous, and it felt like it's going to be a set of rules for this world now.
Agreed.
But it also felt like this came up naturally in conversation, which is why I loved it so much. Because again, the first one, you're telling me what? This is telling me why, the motivations of the dead. And that's cool.
Right.
As cool as Ennis.
Where the fabric is tearing. So we have the 3 kinds of dead, and I 100% agree. This is a central mechanism of this plot, and I think it's really important that we hold on to these. The ones who miss you, the ones who need to tell you something you need to hear, and the ones that want to take them with you. And I'm just getting chills, even just maybe I should turn on the heat in my office. But it's just like, oh, it's so tightly delivered and so part of the conversation. It's just, and to have Fiona Shaw deliver those the way that she does, it was so good. So good.
Fiona Shaw also delivered that last line in a way that made it sound like, I wouldn't really care if they wanted to take me with them. Like I'm pretty done. But
right.
But now she's just there to impart warnings on Navarro.
Right. She's the weird mystic, right? She's the one who's a little bit more in tune and in touch with the spirit world.
Yeah.
I love Navarro saying, "How do you stay okay?" And she just takes a big long drag on her spliff.
In a very green manner.
Yes. And very importantly, don't confuse the spirit world with mental health issues. I think this is a really key point. And this goes back into what Jules, Navarro's sister, is dealing with, right? There's obviously some sort of mental health concerns there.
Or
And
is
that
it?
has nothing to do with talking to the ghosts and being in a place called Ennis that seems to be the where fabric of the universe is tearing.
Right. That's interesting. If you're in a world where ghosts are real, how do you tell the difference?
Yeah. And Rose says that, right? That's the important thing, that you got to know how to tell these things apart for the the real from the mental health. And then within the, not the real, but whatever, the spirit world of it. And which kind are they in the spirit world?
Right.
All right. Danvers returns to the station where her boss, Ted Carasso, played by Christopher Eccleston, is getting briefed on the case. By Hank. Liz uses departmental protocols to force the issue to keep control of the case for 48 hours.
Ted Corsaro. It took me so long to figure out that this was Christopher Eccleston because the voice is just so different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's that his accent, as he's from Northern England.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if his Northern English accent makes his voice sound a little bit higher. And I think in general, British accents end up sounding a little higher in tone than American accents. I think we hold our voices lower because we're taught to be emotionless and whatever. Anyway,
Okay.
the point is, I couldn't tell it was him because he was doing this cop voice that was really good that I totally bought. And he's aged since I last saw him in Doctor Who.
Yes.
Quite a lot. I mean, it's been 25 years, right? It's almost 25 years since he filmed that season. No, it hasn't. It's been like 20 years. But anyway,
Okay.
the point is, I was so impressed because he fell into that role so well.
Yeah. It was a natural. It was a natural.
Also, I don't know if I'd call him her boss. I don't know if that's true. I think it's sort of a supremacy issue, right? It's he works for the state police.
No.
It's the same thing as with Navarro and
yeah. So this is my headcanon on this, if you will allow me. State troopers are state troopers. And I've heard some conversation too about the relationship between the state troopers and this law enforcement agency. And some people were saying, oh, she got busted down to state trooper. Typically being a state trooper is higher in status than being municipal. Because the state troopers really have much higher standards because you really do operate alone and you don't have a lot of backup and stuff like that. So that's that. So that's a little bit different. But I think what's different here, or what's, and interesting here, is like the hat that she's wearing is AFP, right? And it says Ennis Police on her patch, but she's talking about Anchorage and calling command and having Ted, give her a promotion and transfer her to this location. I think what they've done is they've sort of regionalized the police force in a way where typically we would have a municipality where, and Josh the Black and I were talking about this on the Bald Move Discord, was, where the chief of police would answer to a mayor or a select board or something like that. And that would be the jurisdiction of that police force would be for that municipality or area. And I think what they've done is they've created a fictional force that's a little bit more regional in scale, more like a sheriff's structure, or maybe a little bit more like the UK, where if you're a member of the force, you're a member of the force, and it's just, you're at that office or this office. You're either at the downtown London Met office or you're out at Lincolnshire, station or whatever. But you're all still cops for the same agency, ultimately. And so I think what they've done here is that a little bit, that where there's this umbrella, and it's made up, right? That doesn't exist in Alaska currently. So I think they've done that so that they can do a little bit of this story work. That's my headcanon.
If you say so, I'm willing to go with it because I don't care enough to argue.
Right. It doesn't really matter that much. Yeah. It's only for us nerds who want to get into the details.
Fair enough.
What is interesting, though, is that Hank in episode 2, we see on his uniform, he's got captain's bars on his collar. That's the two parallel lines next to each other. And so you can be a rank of a captain in a police department, but not be the chief. So Danvers wears the chief stars, right? Like I think she's got 4 stars. Right. So she's the head of this unit, this organization. This is her jurisdiction. This is her territory. And she's like a captain of a ship, where Carasso is maybe an admiral, right? Way back in.
You're going to get write-ins if you don't get this right.
I know I'm going to get it right. Corsaro. Corsaro is like an admiral back in the way back, right? And he's got nominally authority over her, but she is a command in her own right. And you don't cross those lines. You don't brace.
You respect exactly. Each leader it's kind of like king of your own castle, right? That idea.
Exactly. So this is her fiefdom. That's another really good way to think of it. So
cool. All right, I buy it.
I think another thing is interesting is that we kind of have a little time clock now running for the season. We've got Liz has 48 hours to make some progress on this case. Otherwise, Corsaro, okay, I just slow myself down to say it. Corsaro pulls this thing out from underneath her.
Yep.
So
and the minute she pulls out the law book,
yes,
you know policy, that he was
policy.
Like, yeah, oh, fuck, she got me. You know that he didn't even want to argue it. He's like, she knows the law. She's not making that up.
She cited chapter and verse. It was perfect. Yep. And she went straight to it.
A reading from the book of APB.
AFB. Yeah. It was brilliant. And I think that all goes back into the point that we are establishing that Danvers is competent. She's a competent investigator. She's competent law enforcement. She's in the sense of she knows this stuff. And she may have a terrible, I don't want to call it bedside manner, but
Sure. That's a good word for it, honestly. And I think the problem is if you operate like her, it's sort of like being the person at work who pisses everyone off and rats on everybody. I think that it's like, if you're a nice interpersonal person, you will be forgiven if you make a mistake. Like, people will help you figure it out. People will teach you what you did wrong and try to help, mitigate damage. If you are the person who is so by the book, it enrages everyone, then the first time you make a mistake, you're screwed.
Right. And you're going to get, there's going to be retribution.
She is on thin ice with every single person around her. The minute she messes up, Hank's going to be right on her.
And she can't mess up. Right. She's really on the edge. I totally agree. And so I think what part of what we learn throughout the course of this episode in different parts and pieces is that she was transferred to this location. Hank wears captain's bars. So was he next in line? Did she take his job? Is that why he's such a D-bag?
Maybe, yeah.
What's the source of their friction? What's with the passive aggressive? I'll check the files when I feel like it. And I'm going to keep these here for as long as I want, because he's got authority. He's a captain. You can't just, in a civil service, you can't just dump him out without having cause. And who are you going to get to replace him anyway? It's not like people are beating down the doors to work in Innis, Alaska.
Right. Or even in the police force. I mean, that's another conversation, but how, in certain areas of the U.S., you get paid a lot to be a cop, but it's very few and far between. I think that a lot of police are really underpaid for the job, and this is not like a promote the cops show. I'm just saying, like, it's not a well-paid job in a lot of areas, and I think that a rural town in Alaska would be one of those areas where it's not well paid.
It's difficult
for what you got to deal with. You don't get to get a snow day, right? You got to go out in this crazy ice all the time and figure out people's disputes. Yep. And you got to almost get hit by a drunk driver because the same town drunk, for some reason, keeps getting out and doing that.
Right. Exactly. And so it can wear on you. So, they're all, and I think that's, it's a small community in its isolation is even greater because of the hostility of the climate. Right. And so you're really forced in on top of each other.
Yeah.
And then this goes into Danvers' emotional reactivity, right? The music, the way she reacted to the twist and shout, to the way she reacted to Stacey Chalmers, the drunk driver. And all of this is diametrically opposed to her methodical and calm investigative mind.
It's elementary, Watson.
Absolutely. And so she is in, could we say her heart is in conflict with itself? Where And she uses sex in this episode maybe to salve some of that, to deal with some of that, those emotional traumas that she's holding on to and this tension that she's under. So it's a complex role. I mean, it's a really complex character, and I love it. I love the dimensionality that they're giving us. Yeah. Okay. So we cut scene to the town ice rink where we meet Kate McKittrick. She's somehow a bigwig at the Silver Sky Mine. Liz requires the use of the rink, and then the corpsicle is brought through the center of town, all set to Little Saint Nick by the Beach Boys. And then Navarro shows up. Big scene. Lots going on. What'd you think?
Yeah. Again, nobody pleased to see Liz Danvers. Nobody pleased to see her. Every single time Liz Danvers walks into the room, everyone puts their head in their hand and go, oh, fuck.
Exactly.
I saw that parking ticket from 2 years ago, and she's going to bring it up. And
what does she want?
I have a feeling that Liz Danvers has read the file on every single person living in Ennis, Alaska, and could tell you everything you've done wrong since you were 16.
Probably. I wouldn't want to cross with her. But then if she doesn't care, she doesn't care, right? So just don't get on her radar. Avoid.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Exactly.
We in episode 1 we learned that Navarro had crossed paths with Kate McKittrick. And so when Danvers is talking to the younger Pryor, she says, she started bothering mine people when she was investigating Annie Kay's case, even Kate McKittrick. And young Peter was like, whoa, like that's not good. So here we are with Kate McKittrick. And then I loved it when she's walking out of the ice rink and she's just like, oh, fucking Danvers. And she's like, oh, Trooper Navarro, and keeps walking. It was like a brilliant scene to tell us everything we needed to know about, the interactions between all of these characters.
Yeah. Two completely, I want to say unlikable to their people, right? To the surrounding people. I think they're interpersonally unpleasant to others.
Yep.
And they have to work together on this case now, which is kind of fun.
So
it's like White House Plumbers, but better written.
Much better written. So a few details. We meet Leah's girlfriend. We learn that Peter seems to know how to skate because McKittrick wants to hire him to teach some private some private lessons. I don't know. And Leah and Liz's relationship is really messed up. Leah's like,
yes.
Oh, you came to watch me play. She's like, no, I didn't, and she's like, where's that damn McKittrick?
Yeah.
Right.
Again, completely withholding this. She could have just been like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so busy with this case, but I hope you did great. Anything, or maybe just go watch her play. But, even if she couldn't, even if she really was just slammed on this case and, she had the big boss in town, she couldn't make it, fine. But then, express some regret.
Yeah.
Something. Give her something. I definitely will make the next one.
Really, really messed up.
Yep.
So, about the corpsicle. So here's in my note, Hieronymus Bosch. So you should Google that, and then you will see some of the references that people are using for the corpsicle. But a great overhead shot of the block.
That's spooky.
And we get some other great shots later on in the episode. So we learn that they might have been biting themselves, some sort of self-inflicted wounds. We count 5 heads and 9 feet because one of the feet got broken off by one of the police officers up at the site. I think this is the scene where we see the spiral design. Did I have the spiral design in there? I can't remember now which.
You did.
Yeah,
we talked about it earlier.
But yeah, we got that here, and then we get Pryor, who is the young clever guy. He figures out how to unlock the phone. I thought that was pretty good. And then more Danvers and Navarro friction, right? So we're deepening that conflict between the two.
You have all the guys there. You can't just hold up the phone to the screaming guys.
It worked.
Face ID.
It worked for Molina. So, and that was the one that had died, right? And then we're going to get the video later. And this is what I liked, even within the episode. we're paying off from clue to clue. It's like, okay, we all picked up on the episode 1 that the phone was recording. Episode 2, oh, he unlocks it, and not only do we unlock it, but we get the answer in the same episode, right? So they didn't push that reveal into episode 3. They gave us that answer in the same episode.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I think that this, again, better pacing, asking why, not what. Like, why did he suddenly appear? Seem to have some kind of seizure or involuntary spasm? Standing there and then stop and say, why did he do that? That's
right.
fine. That's fine. Ask that. Don't ask what he did.
Right. All right. Navarro checks in with Ryan at Kovik's bar, or Kovik's burger joint. Sorry. We get some more backstory about the mine, and we meet Chuck, who seems to know Clark, and a fight breaks out about the impacts of the mine on the local environment. So Kovik apparently means Wolverine.
A real Logan over here.
Yes, exactly. And we get that Jules is working there for Kovik as well, which we kind of had got some hints of that from episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
What might have you picked up from this particular scene?
See, you're spoiling me because I could see all your notes in the
okay,
outline.
Maybe I should black them out.
Yeah, I should. I should just not. I'll just not scroll down from now on. I'm like,
right.
I'll just bring in your notes now. The mine poisoning the area. So that's I guess something that we're gonna have to keep an eye on. Is that happening? Maybe that's what's waking her up.
Right.
She's awake.
So this is the second major line of inquiry that seems to be out there, that the mine is doing something, and then people are even like, well, how are the mine and the research station working together or not working together? But something's happening because of the two are here. So there's a lot of theories about what's happening with the mine and what the mine is doing to the environment. And I think that's interesting too, because the show is dealing with all real world circumstances, but none of them are. They're not pushing that forward in a way that, hey, this show is just an allegory for what's really happening to the earth. No, it's just a story. And then here are real world things that are happening. And you could find this in any state of our country where there's environmental degradation happening, poisoning and polluting. We can find crime. We can find corruption. It's all here. And so it's really nicely woven in, I think.
And what's the right question, David?
The right question? Oh, for which issue?
The right question is, what the frack?
Oh, that's frack. Didn't we talk about frack before? That's Battlestar Galactica.
No, I'm saying fracking, fracking for
frack.
Oil with the mines.
I'm being so obtuse.
It's a mining joke.
Yeah, I missed it by a mile, and I don't even have a mining joke to retort to. Anyway, that I can retort with. So Chuck Mosley here, the Reddit's picked up on this guy outside of the mine when Navarro went initially to meet Ryan. The camera sort of lingered on him. So nice little tease to bring his character forward.
Mosley is the new Markley.
There you go.
I'm calling
there you go. Back to the ice rink, Danvers and Peter Pryor work the case, and Liz schools Peter in the ways of the Sherlock. We've got the last Airbender coming up. Are we going to have the last Sherlock? Is that something that we can?
Oh my God. So I actually was not bothered by this scene. I thought it dragged on a little bit.
Okay.
But overall, I thought it was a much better Sherlockian moment than the first one. Though I could have seen Benedict Cumberbatch sitting in an armchair saying these same things to Martin Freeman.
Exactly. Instead, she was wearing her Lowell's. What are those boots? Those warm fuzzy boots, and stomping around the bleachers. Anyway, Sorels. That's what they were. I think they were Sorels.
Okay.
Nice boots. Lulu, the admin at the police station, calls in to let Liz know that the delivery driver and the cleaning ladies are ready for questioning. And then they see the video from Melina's phone. So we get an immediate resolution, as we said before.
Yeah.
So
spooky.
We get Peter mentions a polar bear. I can't remember what this reference is. There's lots of polar bears in this whole episode. I've got pictures of them all up on the detective's notebook. There's I'll call them out in some other scenes, but we've got polar bear iconography all over the place. So where they're going with that, it's hard to tell at this stage, and obviously we had a couple polar bears in the last one. They talked about paradoxical undressing, which is a thing. And it's in the later stage of severe hypothermia. You can have mild, moderate, and severe hypothermia, and increasingly body function shuts down, mental impairment starts to happen. And the other disturbing thing that can happen with paradoxical undressing is terminal burrowing. And I don't know that the corpuscle is necessarily terminal burrowing, but apparently people who under severe hypothermia not only will take all their clothes off, but they'll try to burrow into something. So, they'll try to burrow into the snow, or they'll, burrow into a corner of the room or something like that. So,
yeah.
So, and then we get some more information about the clothing not matching the bodies, the 5 pairs of pants, 3 missing shoes, and everything's folded. So it really feels ritualistic in some way. Like there's some ritual to the fact that somebody took the time to fold the clothes and place them out there like that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Why fold them, right? Not just leave them in a pile or leave them on the people.
Right. Exactly. Because why? What happened here? How? Well, and then like Peter does, he asks the question, why would you run out on the ice without your shoes on? Right? Was that the question?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Why would you?
Or what would cause somebody to have them have that?
They were scared,
reaction.
But why?
Mm-hmm.
And why were they naked to begin with? Do you just sit around your house naked? Because I don't.
I sure don't. I'm
sure some do, but these 5 guys,
teach their
6 guys, 7 guys, whoever they are, 6 guys plus 1 living, I think we're at.
Apparently Clark walked around half naked or naked quite a lot, which we'll find out a little bit later. Kavik and Navarro talk while Kavik doctors one of his huskies. And we get a few more clues about the water thing, how that's getting bad. And that there's more talk of mine protests. So I think this scene was a little bit of transition, a little bit more clue drops, and deepening the relationship with Kavik and Navarro. There's been some talk around the internets about the sex scene that Kavik and Navarro had, and whether Navarro was inappropriate in some way in how she was sort of managing Kavik during their relation.
I think that certainly at least reasonable to raise the question. Yeah, it was not great,
but I think I think it goes to some of her character and this idea that a woman and her sexuality. Obviously, Navarro is a very ego strong woman and dominant in a lot of ways. And I was thinking about that scene relative to this conversation, not just the scene for itself. That she wasn't interested so much in reaching a climax herself, but that she took pleasure from managing Kavik. So it's a power relationship thing, right? And a lot of sexual relationships are about power dynamics, right? So, but in this scene, they seem to be quite at ease with each other, and they seem to be very at ease with each other later on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's strange. It's strange, but yeah, we don't know the boundaries that they've set up.
Right.
I guess I would say.
Right.
We're jumping into this relationship in the middle. And she did steal his toothbrush.
SpongeBob is the king in yellow. That's all I'll say about that. Danvers.
We love SpongeBob. The fool who ripped his pants.
Danvers and Peter.
Now, hold on. I have a theory.
Okay.
They weren't wearing clothes on the ice, and SpongeBob was the fool who ripped his pants. Connection?
Yes, absolutely.
Connection.
I'm down for it.
Go on.
Danvers and Peter question possible witnesses. Danvers talks to the cleaners, and Peter talks to Bill Wallace, the delivery driver.
Yeah, the most interesting thing to come out of here was just Clark being a weirdo.
Right. That was the big thing.
Was it? Did they say that Clark was the one who yelled at the cleaners?
No, Lund was the one who yelled
Lund
at
did,
one of the
okay.
cleaners. He's the research director. He's the founder
Okay.
of Salal. But
Yeah.
Clark, yeah, we learned that he was weird, always in his room. They couldn't clean his room. Bill, the delivery driver, saw him, I guess, fully naked and saw the tattoo. That's how we get the tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so this is all just standard detective moving the plot forward. I do like Bill's line though. Even the dead get bored. That was
Yeah,
really,
that's a good line.
yeah. And it goes into the Billie Eilish song, and it goes into the opening quote. Oh, something about the opening quote, which I did not realize, and the Reddits have schooled me otherwise. That opening quote is a made up quote from the made up character.
Oh.
So the apparently Issa Lopez wrote that line, attributed to that character from that short story. And so not only is that character a unreliable narrator, we have a quote that doesn't belong to him from
Yeah.
that.
What's that effect that they say where like everyone misremembers something so that becomes the thing? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I think so. Yeah, I think it's
Rule
that.
misremembering
You're Googling.
and it becomes
Well, it's called the big
reality.
lie.
No, it's the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect. That's what they
Okay.
call it.
I don't know that one
And
actually.
it occurs when a large group of people believe an event occurred when it did not.
That actually could be something that's going on in this show as well.
I'm gonna read you the intro to it. The Mandela effect got its name when Fiona Broom, a self-identified paranormal consultant, detailed how she remembered former South African President Nelson Mandela dying in the 1980s in prison, although he lived until 2013. She could remember news coverage of his death and even a speech from his widow about his death, yet none of it happened. And so apparently other people thought the exact same as her when she looked into it.
Okay.
So this is the idea of the Mandela effect. And people bring it up as like, do you know the Fruit of the Loom conspiracy theory?
No.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you a question. Does Fruit of the Loom have a cornucopia in its logo?
I don't rightly remember. I just know fruit, and I remember the commercials from when I was a kid when they had a bunch of guys running around in the fruit suits. But
Okay.
I couldn't say.
So people remembered forever Fruit of the Loom having a cornucopia in the logo.
Interesting.
And Fruit of the Loom denies to this day that there was ever a cornucopia in the logo.
Okay.
Now, other people have gone down the rabbit hole and like even gone to the US Copyright Office and found
dug up all
kind
the
of
stuff.
evidence that there probably was a cornucopia in the logo. But there's this whole like Mandela effect conversation about this. But so that's what people usually refer to when they talk about this, is like something kind of benign, but that just everyone seems to misremember.
Interesting. I think there is one on Carl Sagan saying the word billions. So everybody makes a joke about saying billions and billions and billions in a Carl Sagan-esque voice. And then I think Julia Childs is another one where there's some Mandela effect stuff going on.
And there's even a Star Wars one. Luke, I am your father is really, no, I am your father.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
So that's it. That's it. Anyway, we've spent a lot of time on this, but it reminded me of what you're talking about here, right? Is, you know, you're how did we even get here?
We were talking about the fake quote. The fake quote.
Right. The fake quote. Okay, we got back. Don't worry. Thank you for saving us, David. The fake quote. So maybe that's what she's playing with, right? If everyone misremembers something happening, did it happen that way?
Exactly. And so this gets into this whole question of what is a true detective show, what makes a show a true detective show. And one of them is one of the hallmarks of a true detective show is memory and recollection. And this idea that Russ Cole talks about in season 1 of time as being as a flat circle, and that, you know, all of this has happened before and all of this will happen again, type of stuff, which we get echoed through a number of other different television properties.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I want to actually cross circuit another thing, which you and I both just finished watching Fargo season 5, and we're going to talk about it and record an episode about that.
A line, not a circle.
No, from the beginning of the episodes of all the 5 seasons of Fargo television show, and even the movie, the events in this are true, and the names have been changed to protect the dead and the innocent, whatever, right?
Yep.
That whole thing. So it's like it's intentionally and so with Lopez putting this false quote up front, it's intentionally messing with us in this same Mandela effect way. I think it's having us see things or relate to things that may or may not be there in particular desired effects. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I buy it. I buy it.
Maybe I've been hanging out with Rose, enjoying the long night in a spliff.
How do you grow that up there?
You don't. Arctic prices, baby. You got to fly everything in.
Oh boy,
hydroponics.
That's no good. That's no good.
Expensive though, super expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, let's. Shall we move on to the next
I think
scene?
We should do the next scene, probably.
Okay. Navarro drives out to question Chuck Mosley, the guy from the burger joint, and she jams out to the Spice Girls wannabe, and then discovers a necklace with a cross on it that induces a flashback. And we get a lot of flashbacks in this episode. We had Travis and a couple more. So
yeah, maybe do your flashbacks when you're not driving, Mo.
Yeah, exactly. Not good. And that's another hallmark of a production hallmark of True Detective is flashbacks.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And this time, what is time? And how do we tell stories in time, backwards and forwards and forwards and backwards?
Right.
So
are these... Is this just memory? Is this just something happening in her mind? Or is there some kind of effect of Ennis happening, bleeding in, Because I know you flagged as a True Detective hallmark unseen evil forces affecting the world.
Mm-hmm. I think this is telling us a little backstory about Angie and Jules and their mother. And then this question of mental illness. That's where I was going with it. So that the cross was her mother's. She hasn't seen it or thought about her mother in a while. And then we just get that intense emotional reaction because she was singing a song that her sister really loves. And so she was jamming on that. And so all of those neurons started firing off and she just got that really violent flashback. Yeah.
All right.
So that's the way I took it, and clearly painting a picture of their mother as having some severe mental illness to the point where like it was it had a real impact on their lives. Okay. So again, we saw Mosley outside the mine, so we got that, and I've got a bunch of notes here. There's a lot going on here. I just want to go back to Navarro really quick, singing and smiling. The idea of both these characters, Danvers and Navarro, being complex. And this is the first time that we've seen Navarro have joy. And
I would agree with that.
inside of joy. And so it tells us something about her, that she is a person who has known joy. And so that's relatable to us. She's a woman who's sexually active and owns her sexuality, possibly owns other people's sexualities. She's served in combat. She's physically capable. So we're getting this really complex, rich character. And I think something that's really important that we've been getting is that, she's carrying Annie K's case. And she puts gas or alcohol in the guy's gas tank, right? The guy that she arrested before. So that's criminal mischief, right? She's a trooper. She broke the law. She knows Kavik is making moonshine, right? So these are all illegalities. She doesn't care about the law. She cares about justice. And she wears she wears the uniform as a means to an end to seek justice.
See, it's such an interesting thing because that's the kind of person where you root for as long as you agree with her, right? Mm-hmm. you compare that to somebody like Roy Tillman in Fargo,
right?
Who also feels the same. Literally has a speech about the law being more important than, or sorry, justice being more important than the law. And so you got to be really careful with that thing.
Yes, because it can stray really easy, and that's why we have the law to have an objective check on our behaviors, right?
Right. Sure.
So yeah, I think it's a really interesting picture that they're painting of Navarro, and I like that they're doing it in story, right? Instead of just having some POV character exposit it for us.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay, so Navarro arrives at the mine housing and leverages a conversation with Mosley. I really like how she used the bill from the bar as her leverage point. She's
yeah,
just like,
that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I got you. You're boxed in. You got to answer my questions.
Right.
Okay. Major season 1 tie-in.
Okay.
This guy is the cousin of the guy who sold the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who sold the trailer died of bone cancer, which is leukemia, which is what Rose said. And I believe season 1, they referenced that as well. So this guy is Rust Cole's cousin. So this is another major season 1 tieback.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Again, I've not watched season 1 or 2 or 3 for anyone listening and wondering why I'm not commenting. That's why.
Yeah. And it's just we don't know if these are determinative or just Easter egg things, but yeah.
Right.
Clue to note here is $10,000 in cash 7 years ago. So that probably, I'm not going to do the math on the timeline, but that should line up, for all intents and purposes. What did you make of Reese's or Navarro's comment to him at the end about he didn't disapprove of Annie's murder? That he was, kind of maybe glad that she was murdered like that.
That's pretty awful.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, what is
about that?
Well, I because she's making a point there, right? And it goes back into this justice for whom? Who is justice for?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we are picking up in this season is the issue of this sort of epidemic of murdered Native women across our country.
Yeah. There was. Do you remember the Gabby Petito thing?
No.
Which is not she's not an Indigenous woman.
Okay.
She was a white woman from New York who was unfortunately, very sadly, murdered by her partner. She was on a road trip with him, and she was murdered by him over the summer. She went missing. They couldn't find her for a while.
Yeah, there was a lot of. Yeah, I remember this last year. I think last couple of years. Yeah.
So I don't remember the exact number, but people were doing TikToks about how dozens, I think, of Indigenous women went missing in the same period and were never brought on television or anything.
Right.
And there was no effort to find them or figure out what happened to them. And I think that's a big point that this show might be trying to make, which is we treat crimes against Indigenous women with much less priority,
right,
than we treat crimes against a white woman,
right, or people of privilege of any kind.
Yeah. But I just, in general, right now, 6 men died, 7 men are involved with this research station. Not even people from this area, right? They
right, exactly. Yeah, they're from all over the world, actually.
And that's everyone. Anchorage is coming in. We're figuring out what's going on. Like everything's getting pulled out for these guys. They're shutting down the town's ice rink. What the hell else is there to do in Ennis? They're shutting down the ice rink for 2 days.
Exactly.
I'm sure they're not paying her a lot for it. They probably have to give her some kind of eminent domain money, but I don't think it's a lot. It's probably like $100 or something.
Right.
And so and that's just for these guys, and it's very sad what happened to them, and they should get justice. Not to say that they shouldn't get justice, but it's just a shame that the stops don't come out for people.
The allocation of justice is out of balance here.
It's uneven.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's uneven. And I think that's what Reese, who's a known activist as well, in this scene, I felt like she wasn't only playing the character Navarro and talking to Mosley in this way, but she was saying to us in the audience that this other thing is well. But it was so seamless and so just it fit so nicely that I don't feel like the show is preaching at me. I just feel like the show is dealing with the circumstances as we have them, and it's just, as I said before, just this is just set. This is what's just going on in this setting of this story.
Yeah, they're showing. They're not telling.
Exactly.
All right, David, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll catch up with our friends Danvers and Navarro. And we're back.
So we pick up with Hank, who is messaging with Lena while listening to I Love You by Johnny Cash. And then he finds that the NEK file box is missing.
So I guess I was wrong. I think you asked me last time, do you think he knew that his son took it?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I was wrong because I thought no. But I guess he did get it over on him the first time.
I thought
right?
You said yes. I said no. I thought.
Oh no, I thought it was reversed. I thought that he won.
We're in the true detective zone now. Here we where memory becomes.
I know the Mandela effect about our own podcast
is exactly it's happening.
It's the Metanella effect.
We were wrong. I certainly knew I was. I certainly feel like I was wrong because I thought he knew and he just let it blow by. But clearly he did not. What do you make of Alina?
What do I think about her? I don't know a lot about her right now. But next week on 90 Day Fiancé, we'll be seeing this couple.
Hank and Alina. I got major red flags when she said, I'm worried about mother. And he said, don't worry. I've got some money left that I'll send you.
I've seen this episode of 90 Day Fiancé. It doesn't go well.
It does not.
Doesn't go well. On the tell-all, it's going to be crazy.
And then later, when Hank is at the ice rink with his son, he says, your mother, and even when your mother left us, she didn't steal from us. So I just feel like Hank's going to get fleeced big time here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and didn't we speculate that Hank had a previous relationship with Stacy as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Hank's busy. He's a busy boy.
Danvers and young Pryor discuss the case over some fine Alaskan bodega and coffee, and we learn more about Clark, as well as the funding source for Shalal. Danvers continues to consume Peter. Okay, another major season 1 callback. The shell company, NC Global Strategies, is owned by Tuttle United. I don't want to say any more, but if you know, you know. And Tuttle is a major name from season 1. So yet a third big callback. So we got Travis. We got 2 data points on Travis. We got the spiral, obviously, and then this mention of Tuttle. So, and I'm sure I've been waiting all week for this episode to hit the airwaves, and I'm just going to watch the Reddit boards light up because it's going to be fire when it does. People are going to lose their shit.
Cool. No, I love when people get rewarded for being loyal to an anthology show. They do that in American Horror Story poorly. And right. I'm glad that they're doing it better here.
So Clark is from Dublin, and he hasn't spoken to his mom in over 10 years.
That's very sad.
Yeah. And Danvers' life seems really messed up, and she's going to mess up Peter's life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right.
What were you saying last episode about the relationship? There was something about her, the kind of boss that she is. Like, you want her approval.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I think that you you want her approval because it feels good, right? She's the boss
Mm-hmm.
who's tough on you, but you can earn her approval.
That's it.
Whereas
Yeah.
Hank is the boss who's just a dick to be a dick.
Right.
And he's the boss that's going to push all the work on you to not do work himself. Whereas I think Danvers, you can see, when she, she's not gonna hand you the answers, just like she makes young Pryor ask all the questions to her later.
Mm-hmm.
But she rewards him when he asks the right questions, right? She's like, yeah, that's the right question. She really encourages him. And you could tell he like lights up at that. He's ready to go.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. So I think that's a good characterization of her.
And she doesn't necessarily have the answers, right? She's working the case.
Right. She is working with him, even if she's just like Socrates taught by asking questions. That doesn't mean he wasn't working, right?
Very
that doesn't mean he
Socratic.
wasn't teaching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and she doesn't have it all figured out. They're figuring it out together, but she's guiding him in it. Did you ever see a movie called The Name of the Rose with Sean Connery? This feels very much like that, where this, I believe it was a Franciscan monk who solves this big murder, and it made a big splash when it came out. I think it was in the 90s sometime. Anyway, but it's very much like that, this Socratic sort of method.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Danvers shows up at Peter's house, which was really weird to go from that scene to like, wait, you're kicking him to the ice rink, but then you're going over to his house?
Yeah.
To pick up Leah, because I guess Leah was over there, and Peter and Kayla talk while Peter and Kayla are talking on the phone. Kayla's grandmother is putting tribal markings on Leah, which upsets Danvers, who then gets kicked out of the house by Kayla. So
I think that's fair to kick her out.
This was a pretty bracing scene.
Why can't she have temporary tribal marks?
Yeah. She is clear. This again is this opposite side of Danvers, this unhinged, emotionally reactive side of her.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, she's a child. And oh, she's 17, which again, I said this to you. I was like, why even make us go like, oh, is she, having an improper relationship with a 16-year-old when she was 17 the whole time? They're probably in the same grade.
Right. And we actually have some feedback about that later. Yeah.
It's just like, that's what I mean about episode 1. I thought it made me ask like what instead of why. And that was one of the what questions. It just felt like unnecessary mystery.
So I've got a working theory about Danvers's reaction to Native culture.
Mm-hmm.
That this is all part of her trauma response, unjustified, clearly, but her trauma response to whatever happened with her husband and son.
Yeah, probably. And it could be something where she like thinks that, being identifiably indigenous puts you in more danger, which, that might be true, but that doesn't mean that you give in and let them take away your culture from you, right?
Right. Yeah.
And for, if that were something where Leah chose like, hey, you know what, I'm not into this culture, I don't want to be part of it, that's one thing, but Danvers trying to force her out of it is really horrible.
How hypocritical too. She's like, I don't care if you sleep with another kid, just don't film it, right? Whatever. Like, you don't have to be a mom. It's okay. I'm going to do whatever. This whole are they or aren't they parent and child? And if you're telling this person 8 times out of 10, I'm not your parent and I don't care, but then wait, I do something that's part of my heritage. That's part of my birthright as a member of this community and a part of these extended families, that I want to put on some traditional markings with a Sharpie? Like, who are you to tell me? Yeah. Right? That's just completely out of line for Danvers. Completely.
It's messed up. Don't do that. Don't do that, Liz.
Don't.
Every single time I've said her name tonight, I've almost said Carol. I'm still there.
You're still there.
I'm still there. I can't get it out of my head.
Yeah. Just got to slow down. And I loved how the grandmother too was just like going off on Liz. Like she was just giving her the what for.
Yeah. Not so having it.
There's a big Wikipedia article on those 3 lines on the chin. I cannot pronounce the name, and I'm not even gonna try because I don't want to do it any sort of disrespect. But there's a long it's got a lot of history around it, and it's really interesting. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, maybe we could put this link in the show notes, John? Or I'll definitely put it in
it starts with a Y if you're looking for it in the show notes. They don't even provide you a phonetic guide to the pronunciation. So I'm not going to try either. Usually I'll try it if they give me a phonetic guide,
right.
but
No, I don't want to be
I don't know about this
disrespectful
one
with it. So we'll just call it tribal markings. But yeah, there's a long, deep tradition about it. It's really interesting. So check that out. I'll put the link in the detectives notebook as well for Patreon subscribers. That'll be in there.
Cool. Yeah, it looks really cool, and I hope Leah gets to enjoy it. I really do. I don't want Carol. I don't want Liz to ruin it for her. Yeah, it finally happened.
Yeah. A little clue or Easter eggy thing is the polar bear earrings that Leah is wearing. Very clearly in the shot, little bears, right? So more of that polar bear iconography. So not sure what's up with that, but it's there. And then we get confirmation that Leah's 17. So that was a big question people were sleuthing on. Okay, Navarro and Jules. They talk about Jules' health while they're shopping. And we get the line "Arctic pricing, baby," which is very true. I've heard from people who have lived in or work in Alaska that the cost. I mean, just getting milk, right? Cereal, like it's all.
Where are you going to keep the cows?
Exactly, which is why milk is not a part of historical Alaskan culture,
right?
So, I'm really leaning. I don't know that it matters, so maybe I won't even necessarily talk about it. But I have some thoughts on Jules's mental condition, her mental health concerns. I have a old high school friend who was affected in a similar way, and it's really it's a lot to deal with.
So. Yeah, it's a shame.
And again, we get more of Navarro's character here. The caring side of Navarro,
right?
So we got a badass. We have somebody who's, in control of their sexuality. We have somebody who's really concerned with justice. We have somebody who's traumatized by her personal past with her and around her family, with her mother. And then we have somebody who really cares a lot for her little sister. Right. And she's nurturing and trying to support her, but also just trying to be like, hey, I think you should do this. And she's like, no, push back. And she's like, okay, I respect your boundary. Right. So she respects her boundaries, but not Kovik's.
Yeah. She's someone who cares too much about a lot of things. Right. She cares really hard, and it sometimes is charming, and it sometimes gets her, success and things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it, like you were just saying, it sometimes gets her in trouble.
Yeah. All right. Leah begins to take off back at home. Leah begins to take off her markings when she gets a text from her girlfriend. She sneaks out while Liz fights with the Christmas decorations. Leah and her girlfriend meet at, I believe is what her girlfriend's family store. And then Danvers finds the one-eyed polar bear, which induces another flashback. Flashback. The music that's playing here is Pass Them by Agnes Obel. Really beautiful song again. The music has just been top notch.
Yeah. No, I think both this and Fargo had interesting soundtracks where they didn't follow one style or other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. John, do you have a process to store your holiday decorations? Do you just throw everything into the bin as it is, or do you carefully wrap things up, or somewhere in between?
We have like a thing that the delicate stuff goes into, and then a bin that everything else gets thrown into. Okay. We have a real Christmas tree every year.
Yeah.
So we don't have to store a tree. When I was a kid, oh my God, we had a fake Christmas tree.
Are we getting into a Fishes episode here on your backstory?
Maybe. So we had this fake Christmas tree that was huge, and it had like 3 different numbering systems to the assembly. Yeah. And so there were like the colors of the stripes, the number of stripes, and the placement of the stripes. And 3 different people had clearly set these up.
I love it.
And they didn't go together. So my oldest brother and I would sit there for like 12 hours on like the day, on like Black Friday, on like the day after Thanksgiving, and figure out how to make this stupid tree.
That's hilarious.
And it was a great time. We had a fun time with it,
Absolutely.
But
beautiful memories.
Oh my God, did it take so long every year. And not once did someone suggest, hey, maybe we should make our own system for next year.
Right, exactly. Why don't we label these ourselves?
I don't know who first owned that tree. I don't know who made this problem of multiple methods. But my mom got rid of that tree at some point. I was like, man, you got rid of that tree? She goes, it was a pain. I was like, yeah, but that was our pain.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's another True Detective hallmark, is these deep memories and deep family connections, and this interplay between the detective's professional life and their personal life, and how those two things affect each other sort of across that boundary of that individual. So, okay. So big clue theory time thinking here really quick. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but I want to bring this one out. Well, we've got a couple of things to deal with. Let's deal with the small stuff really quick. The bear, right? She finds it in the box. So how could she have picked it up on the floor when she was woken up in episode 1? So I think that was in her dream.
Okay. I buy it.
Yeah. And then obviously we get Twist and Shout. We get the answer to Twist and Shout.
Yeah.
So again, a quick payoff. And then she puts the bear in the box and puts the box aside, which is a great metaphor for her emotional state. She's just putting her emotions of this loss and this trauma into a box and just pushing it aside and refusing to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Compartmentalization seems to be a big part of her life.
Big time. Big time. Okay, so that out of the way, I want to come back around to Leah's room. There's a lot of aquatic imagery on the walls of Leah's room. There's like a whale and a bunch of other fish and stuff like that. And it's there. You got to look for it. You got to watch the episode like, I don't know, half a dozen times like I did. And it's there. And this is a theory that is getting kicked around quite a lot. So this is like the third major line of inquiry that the Reddit detectives. I heard this first on the Ringer, the Prestige podcast with Joanna Robinson, and then Jim and Aaron were talking about it on Bald Move. There's the Wikipedia article, which covers all of this sort of information that we're all working with. And that is of a Inuit god. Well, not even just Inuit. It's sort of an Arctic regional myth of Sedna. And Sedna has a lot of different stories, origin stories in the way that the particular things happen. But one thing that always does sort of happen is that her father cuts off her fingers, and she sinks to the bottom of the ocean, and then her fingers become all the sea life, the whales and the walruses and all of the other kinds of marine life. And she is a bit of a vengeful or wrathful goddess, has some control of the underworld, controls the wildlife. And so hunters have to appease her and make offerings in some cases to her, depending on the particular culture. And the idea here, it ties back to the picture that Darwin drew, right, in episode 1. So Peter and Kayla's son drew the picture of the scary woman with the bleeding hands and the star fiery eyes. And so a lot of people are working on this idea that the metaphysical story overlay here is something to do with Sedna, and that Sedna is awaking. She's awaking. It's Sedna who's waking up. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like it. Deep cut.
Yes. So, and the Reddit, man, one episode in, and like people have gone really far, and this theory feels pretty solid. Like,
yeah.
is it determinative? Is it actually what's happening? Are we actually going to get a metaphysical answer? Are we going to have a mundane answer, or is it going to be ambiguous? This overlay feels really that's a really solid clue. Like if a child draws a scary picture in a TV show like this, pay attention.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
well, I think what they're going to have to do is Leah and Navarro are going to have to go north of the wall to get
exactly
a minion of Sedna back to show Danvers so that she believes them.
That's exactly right. All right. Gruesome scenes of the corpsicle as Peter Pryor continues to work on it when he gets an interrupting phone call from Danvers asking for the credit history of Clark. Peter is assaulted by his father for stealing the Annie K case file.
Yeah, that was really horrible. I mean, the slap, when he did that, I went, "Oh shit!" You know, like that was not a jump scare for me. I saw that you wrote it was a jump scare. It was not a jump scare for me. I was jumped already from the intro, and
right.
I was just like, "Oh, why is he doing that?"
It was the way that they edited it too. As he turns around and the way that the camera works, the editing had a kinetic impact on me in the real world, right? So it came off the screen, and I really felt that. And earlier in the intro, when I mentioned the acting by these two actors, like the look on Peter's face I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Anyway, I should look in my my character guide on the thing here. I have too bad there's not a website. Finn Bennett. The subtlety of the pain and the shame that he must be feeling in that moment to be remonstrated by his father in that way. And then the anger of like, F you, dude, I'm a man. I have a family. I have children. I have a job. I'm, pillar of my community.
And it's not his property to be stolen.
Exactly.
You can't tell me that I'm stealing from you when it's the property of the police department and I'm a police officer.
It's madness. The gaslighting. I mean, it's gaslighting on an epic scale. Blood is blood. Yeah. Danvers isn't your blood. Oh man, she's not, but that's what good gaslighters do, right?
Right. Use a bit of the truth to obfuscate their nonsense.
Yeah. So it sounds like they're Hank's spouse and Peter's mother, one and the same there, obviously she left him with good reason. And like I mentioned before, he says pointedly, even your mother didn't steal from us when she left.
Yeah. Was his mother maybe named Nadine? I'm not sure.
All right. Liz drops in on Daddy Corsaro.
You got it. You'll get Corsaro and I'll get Liz by the end of this podcast. And we'll be good.
It's part of our brand. It's part of the Lorehounds brand that we have one little stumble on each show.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we get some interesting backstory on the relationship between Liz and Daddy Corsaro.
I think it was actually a front story position.
I think so.
This felt gratuitous to me, but let me tell you something. Mm-hmm. And I told you this over chat, but I'm going to tell you on air now. And I didn't even get the right screenshot to tell you in chat, so I'll tell you now too, is I did not know it was Christopher Eccleston this whole time. I was expecting to see him because I knew I still at this moment did not know it was Christopher Eccleston. And I had heard you say he was in this episode. And I was like, okay, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And he does this stupid fucking grin while he's doing it with Liz. Right. And he does this stupid grin with his big ears poking out. And I'm like, oh my God, hello, doctor. All of a sudden, I realize that's the guy.
It's like seeing Santa naked or something. Like, oh God, no.
Yeah, it was shocking. I did not need this scene again. Didn't somebody say like I was a prude in Wheel of Time or something?
No, did they? I don't remember that.
And I think they basically said like, oh, it seems like you don't like sex scenes in science fiction fantasy. I think first of all, this isn't that, but and I'm watching an HBO show. I expect it to some extent,
right?
But I honestly, I don't care if it's a sex scene. It's an hour and 2-minute episode, and this sex scene did nothing to tell me anything about the characters.
Really?
I thought so.
Told me a lot. Okay.
Okay. All right.
But you like the sex scene in Foundation with Empire and the Cloud
because
Maiden.
that told me things about the characters, and they didn't have sex, by the way.
No, they didn't. They never did complete the act, did they?
No, but that's my point. Is
but it was an intimate relation anyway. But yeah,
sure. But like it's not like they had a conversation or something leading up to it. It was just, oh, let me just show Christopher Eccleston doing a stupid grin and being yelled at for a couple of minutes, and then y'all can just deduce from that. It's like you didn't get anything out of that you wouldn't have gotten about talking about it or showing the lead up or the afterward. I think that sex scenes should be reserved for when you need them to exposit something.
Right. And I think there's a conversation at large around the portrayal, and I'm not saying that you're saying this because I understand how you're boxing this. And then I'm sort of pulling back a little bit further and thinking about a larger conversation and wondering how this is going to play out, because a lot of people had a lot of problems with the Navarro Kavik scene from episode 1. And so now we've got Danvers and Eccleston here, and the dynamics are different, but it's still a portrayal, a graphic portrayal, not graphic, but a detailed portrayal. I don't know how to explain this. We're getting in the act, and we're seeing, a vision. The camera is framed in such a way that it's not being suggestive. Like, it's very explicit what's going on. And women and their sexuality and being, not just a passive role in it, but an active and let's say any word that's coming to mind here, domineering or controlling or anything like that, all has sort of a negative tinge to it. But like, no, I'm not ready to be done yet, right? I want something in this. There is something that I have my needs in this relationship and in this moment.
Yeah.
And I think
I didn't think there was anything.
No, I'm not saying you were. I'm not saying you were. I was saying that I'm talking about something else, which, and I think we're not used to seeing that in our modern media. And so then when we do see it, it's a little bit confronting for people. And I thought that at least with Eccleston's acting, he certainly was acting the part. There seemed to be some realism there. And that's a real dynamic where one partner is not ready yet or has to catch up to the other partner, and the other partner is about to, and once it's over, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, it felt like a very real scene, and it goes into the power relationships and into these women characters who are agents in their own life, be it their careers or, their sex or their relationships, and being flawed in many ways in some of that, like the way that Danvers treats other people in the community around her or her own so-called daughter. So I'm just pointing to this fact that this is just to me, explained a lot about Danvers's emotional state. She's using sex to salve her emotional wounds. She's carrying on a relationship that's gone on for 19 years, illicitly at times, right? When he was married and then she was with somebody else, even though that she was quote unquote on a break. So it told me a lot about her character.
Okay. But I think what my point is, I have no problem using the fact that people had sex as a character development thing, or even the dynamic. I mean, just her showing up and then, closing the door on it right away afterward. I think that tells you plenty of how she's treating this, right? Is she's using this guy.
She's using sex like drugs or alcohol or food or some other.
I think that my point with all this is that for me, when there is a gratuitous sex scene, I think of this scene in Curb Your Enthusiasm, where they're trying to pitch a show and they have Julia Louis-Dreyfus on there, and she's saying, "I want to be on HBO. I want to say fuck," and it's just very cringe for me,
right?
And it's supposed to be cringe on that show, and this feels like we're going to be on HBO. We're going to have a sex scene, right? It's just like, well, we can, so we will in every episode, and I'm like, all right, okay. Can we move on to the plot? Mm-hmm. That's how it makes me feel.
Got it. It's and and for other people, I'm not saying this about you, but for other people, I can see why this is confronting as well. Like
Yeah. I'm fine.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying you're not fine with it in that way.
Yeah.
But it is, and we drop right into the scene, right? Like,
yeah,
it's a vigorous scene that they show.
Yeah.
I've tried to find soft words for it.
Sure.
Anyway.
A vigorous scene.
A vigorous scene.
It's Christopher Eccleston grinning ear to ear, so he's
right.
having a good time.
Yeah. So we learn a bunch about their relationship, about was she sent here or promoted to here? I don't think that. I kind of have a feeling that maybe he promoted her, like she's ready for promotion, so I'm going to promote you, and it's an Ennis, and that gets us away from each other. Yeah. Because we've been going on, this is the last time, as they, consistently say.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is whether this is before or after the death of her husband and son or partner. I shouldn't assume that they're married or not.
Are they definitely dead? Or are they separated?
That's an assumption.
Yeah.
It feels like it. It feels like it. And I don't think maybe they weren't even married.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah. So some assumptions there, but anyway, somebody that she was, obviously romantically involved in and potentially had a child with. Okay, moving on. Back at the station, she checks into Clark's credit history and finds the record of when Clark got his tattoo, and she calls the tattoo shop. So we get the photos of the tattoo on his chest, and then we get later on the reveal of the second photo, which is that Annie K had it on her back. Okay, so we got a clue drop and a little setup for the little tension to set up the end of the episode. Navarro arrives home to find Liz in her house. They agree to work the case together, and then we learn a little bit more about their history. I love this line. You want in or just want to go fuck yourself?
That was pretty good. And where do the cans go? Do they still go in the same place? Like,
dude, so why is she asking that?
I think they were roommates. That's what I think.
Okay. I didn't know how far Liz and Navarro might have gone in their relationship. Maybe that's just my mind.
No, I think they were roommates. I think she got transferred to the police department. Liz did.
That's a valid
They were roommates, and they hated each other so much that Liz moved out and took her Leah with her, whatever she is to her, and then transferred Navarro.
Well, Leah belongs to. Wait, did you say took Leah with her?
I'm saying Liz took Leah with her.
Yeah, no, I think. No, because Leah was whatever her partner's daughter, right? So Leah and Navarro aren't related. So yeah.
No, I know. That's why I said her Leah.
Okay, with her. Got it. I see what you're saying. So a couple of clue details. He got his tattoo 4 days after she died, and we've got confirmation that the tongue is Annie K's and that it has unusual cell damage.
Ooh.
So, and we know that Salal was working on some cellular, micro stuff.
Things to prevent cell damage, right?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
So was that in the solution of preservation?
Interesting.
Maybe resurrected.
I like it.
What's her name?
Annie K.
Annie K. Resurrected Annie K from her tongue.
Dude, she's awake.
She's awake.
Yeah.
What if she's underground and awake because the DNA fixer found her body underground
and
woke her up?
There you go. I like it.
And they're gonna dig her up, and she's gonna yell just like the guy at the beginning of this episode. I'm going down the rabbit hole now. I gotta get out. I gotta get out.
Chills.
That's scary.
Chills. One other little clue detail. Navarro mentions the Wheeler thing. We did what we needed to do. So some more shared history, a little clue drop there for another episode. All right. As Leah leaves from her rendezvous, she sees the lights from the ice rink. Peter watches a little TikTok and gets startled by Leah. Leah notices the welt on his face. We learn more about Hank, Liz, and Leah's dad. Flashback. Sorry, I'm trying to. There's so many flashbacks. Last episode we had phone calls. This episode we've got flashbacks. That's our device in this episode.
Fair enough. Is the flash? You said the flashback is a thing. Is the phone call a big thing in True Detective?
Yeah.
You've come up with a test, David. I think this is a good time for you to introduce.
Okay. I don't think the phone call is part of the test, or at least a hallmark of this show, but it's this season it's certainly working. But yeah, the test. So we have the Shippy test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which talks about the medium and the message. Did changes to the message of an original work, how did those get reflected in the medium? So is it television or movie or whatever? And did the translation of that into the medium corrupt or obfuscate the original messaging? And this comes from Tom Shippey who's a famous Tolkien scholar and a lecture that he had given. So
Right.
we didn't make up the test, but we put quotes around it, calling it.
But it's
the Shippey
ours
test.
now.
Yeah, nobody else calls it the Shippey test except for us.
No, they do.
No, they don't say that. They don't say Shippey test. They don't use that combination of words.
Yes, they do. The Prancing Pony definitely does.
You have to. Okay, you'll have to.
I promise you. I don't want to. Okay. I don't want to say it. I don't want to misattribute it.
Mandela effect. I never heard them say it. So.
Well.
There we go. Anyway,
I used to listen to many hours of them, and I'm pretty sure they've said it. But
okay,
I think Marilyn will write in. No, she won't, because she will never listen to this podcast because she's never going to watch the show. But
we have the Marilyn Pukila test, who are our favorite Tolkien scholar, and that measures relative violence, like how violent is an episode or a season of television. Sort of on a zero scale. Is Rings of Power, that's sort of our 0 point. Is that too violent? Is it more violent or less violent than that as a benchmark? And then we have the Sanderson slider, which you told me about, which
it sounds delicious.
It does, right? It's a little serving of delicious food. I'm thinking more of a slider like in software application.
No, I understand. I'm just making a joke.
And makes me hungry now. The Sanderson slider is the degree of adaptation versus inspiration. So if you take a particular piece of work, are you adapting it and putting it directly on the screen as close as you can, or are you just taking inspiration from it and then just doing your own thing based on that inspiration? So I would like to propose to you a new test, and we can call it the Lopez test. And this would be kind of a pass-fail, I think, and that it would measure the status of a show relative to its franchise. So if we say, did True Detective season 4 pass the True Detective or the Lopez test? Does it have all the hallmarks that make it associated with the True Detective brand? Fargo season 4, I would argue, fails the Lopez test, and that it does a lot of Fargo-y things, but it doesn't rise. It's its own thing. I love season 4. Don't get me wrong. Don't at me. I love it, but I don't think of it as Fargo. Certainly Ahsoka is part of the Star Wars IP, right? Like that's an easy one. Andor, like that passes the Lopez test. So it's this question of, does a show fall within its stated category or IP brand? What do you think?
Well, I like the test. I thought you were asking me what I thought of True Detective this season. I was like, I have no idea.
No. I meant the formulation of the test.
No, I like it a lot. I'm into it. Yeah, let's stick with it.
Okay, cool. So some True Detective hallmarks are unseen evil forces affecting our world and this whole struggle between light and dark. It principally centers its storytelling on 2 law enforcement officers, and they represent these guardians in some way that keep the bad men out. I'm a bad man keeping other bad men out. That's a line that's delivered in season 1.
Oh no, we have to bring in another Billie Eilish song. I'm the bad guy.
I don't know that one.
You don't know that one?
No.
So look it up. Do you never tell me you didn't see all the memes like 2 years ago when that song was out and they had I'm the bad guy, and then in the break before they did the dance, they would put like random sounds or quotes or people.
Nope.
Okay, it was a whole thing on TikTok.
Okay, anyway. Well, there you go.
No, you were
these days.
This was pandemic talk. Everybody was on it.
Oh no, anyway. I was not on TikTok during the pandemic.
Oh, see, that was your mistake. That was the sanity machine. Anyway, That's unrelated. You should listen to that song, and I think they should incorporate it and do a montage of Liz and Navarro.
Right. But anyway, this idea that these guardian figures, be they wherever they fall on a moral assessment, they make sacrifices to sort of keep the evil at bay. So when Peter says to Leah, you don't want to go close to the corpsicle, you don't want that kind of, you don't want that on the back of your eyeballs when you're going to sleep at night. So he's saying, I can go there and I'm absorbing this evil so that you don't have to. I can figure out why and what's going on here so that you can just remain safe and what have you. And be, it's just like this idea of a guardian type figure standing on this threshold of the light and the dark. And then I think I mentioned before about the personal lives being intertwined with the professional lives. And then these another big hallmark is these sort of asking existential questions. And the past and memory, time is a flat circle, sort of all of these philosophical questioning of, the nature of reality and the nature of memory and these kinds of things. So
cool.
So I would say that True Detective season 4 Night Country definitely passes the Lopez test.
It sounds like it from what you've been telling me. Yeah. Whatever you say, man. That's where I'm at with it.
Okay, well, let's keep going on here. So, little clue thing here. This is all over the place. On the wall of the ice rink, Blue King and a crab, and so that was the crab factory. And so everybody's like locking in on the fact that King, because we have the King in yellow from season 1, was a big deal. So now we have the Blue King. So people are cluing on that particular logo, and that's in a couple of scenes. And in the flashback, I forgot to mention, back in the scene with I can't do it, Kurosawa, Daddy Ted Eccleston.
Okay.
There's a bear on the wall behind them on the as they're having relationships.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then in the flashback that happens in this scene, there's a bear on the wall when Danvers and I don't know what this guy's name is, possibly Jake, but I don't know if that's Jake because Jake was mentioned before, but we don't know that's him. There's a bear on the wall there as well. So, and Leah's dad was a stoner and an artist, and Hank's dad, or Peter's dad, was a musician as well. So,
cool.
Yeah. Have you seen those guys on TikTok, on that TikTok video that he was watching?
No, I don't think I have. I didn't recognize it.
I have seen those guys. When I was on TikTok, I have seen those guys. And there's a whole cadre of dance people. They're also on Reels, on Instagram Reels. So I've seen them.
Instagram Reels. Now you're showing your age.
All right. Kovic is relaxing in the tub when Navarro pays him a visit, and she works out a major clue in the case, which leads her to the missing trailer. What did you make of this scene and this furthering of their relationship?
I do enjoy that we're shown that Navarro's a competent detective, right? She's not just someone who has, a passion for solving the cases, but she actually does have the skills, and I did appreciate that. Right.
And Kovic feeds her the line, if you don't have anything, she wouldn't want you, so you have it all. As he's, making pancakes. What a
supportive partner.
Yeah, exactly. And clearly they're, they have an ease with each other at some level, even though she steals his toothbrush. So, right. As Danvers reviews Clark's files, she gets a call from Navarro, and they investigate the trailer together. This is when the booster rockets on this episode get lit, right? This trailer thing. As a newbie to True Detective, talk to me a little bit about your experience of this scene.
Yeah, this was where I was like, okay, yeah, so this is a weird show. This is not just your average procedural here. Procedural. Do you know that Brandon loved that so much. Brandon the Bard heard you
Oh,
say
really?
procedural, and he sent us a message while we were recording, admiring it. He said,
He's
"Excellent,
just
10 out
listening
of
to the
10."
episode.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Very good.
He's having a great time.
So crazy stuff, right?
Yeah, it was crazy, and I was like, I didn't know this show could do that.
Right. So season 1 does this with in a few instances where you're just like, whoa, what planet did I just show up on? Like I was sitting here on my couch and now I'm in Carcosa or something, which is this weird evil city. Did you any particular clues or anything? I mean, obviously I've got all the notes here, but is there anything in particular that stood out on you minus my notes, like that, without me leading the witness, as it were?
Not really. Honestly, it was like obviously there's bear stuff going on, but it's really hard to follow this scene.
Okay. So obviously, where did we have? Oh, you know what I did? Oh yeah, here we go. We forgot. Not only the trailer, we got to back up half a step back, was because when Liz is looking through Clark's notebooks, we start to get into all that crazy writing, right? And all his crazy doodles. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So right in the eyes, and she's awake in her eyes, and all these sort of spiral designs and stuff. So we get that tension ramp up, and then we get the phone call, and then we go to the trailer. And so, yeah, it just sort of all serves as a piece. There's a little bear figure next to the phone when she picks up Annie K's phone. There's a stuffed bear in the corner. All of these things are just like right there in the shot. So more weird bear iconography. There is the obvious spiral on the ceiling, and when she looks up at the spiral, we get this weird space music. Like it almost feels like the spiral is gonna come alive, right? And that also kind of calls back to a scene which I'm not going to describe, but from season 1, where we get this like whoa, like are the walls of reality here breaking down, between us and some other place.
It's the maze from Westworld.
Absolutely. And the other thing I want to point out is that all of the pictures on the wall above that weird bed, with a weird, I don't know what we want to call that body, that sort of constructed body. All of the pictures up on the wall are not, there's a few pictures of what I think there are a few pictures of Annie K, but there are a lot of other pictures of a very white-skinned woman with red hair.
Yeah.
And they're all over.
So, yeah, this is a spooky guy we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Spooky guy.
So I've got a lot of pictures. I took a lot of screen grabs of those, and I'll put those all in the detective notebook. So if you want to go back later and see all that stuff, it'll be ready by the time the episode airs. But I've got freeze frames of all of these different clues and these little bear things and pictures of the wall and stuff like that. So
cool.
If you are interested.
Yeah.
All definitely. Right. Young Pryor calls in, and we learn that there are only 6 bodies in the corpsicle. We've got G, Marins, Molina, Katov, Meta, and Emerson. And we have Clark and Lund are missing. And then 7 Devils by Florence and the Machine kicks in. That is the episode. That's a lot. A lot going on.
That was a lot. Episode. Yeah, I know. We're at 2 hours and 5 minutes, and we just finished the episode. And we got feedback. And
I've got there's so many little things that I skipped too, just for the sake of time, right?
I know you gotta at some point cut yourself off, right?
Exactly. Less is more sometimes. Less is more.
With Charmin Ultra.
We're not sponsored. I wish we were.
No, you know what I'm talking about though, right? The commercial.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're not sponsored by them.
Oh yeah, we're not sponsored. But I gotta say, there's some jingles that are just so effective.
Oh yeah,
that it just stays in your head forever. And it's Charmin Ultra, less is more. That's always going to be in my head.
Has a first name. It's
and both of those they've abandoned. You don't hear those anymore, but they're always in my head. I think just stick with it. Just don't break it.
All right. Well, should we take a quick break?
No, because we already did 2 breaks.
Okay. So we're going to roll straight into feedback.
Leave it in.
Let's bring it around. Let's bring it to a close. First up, Lore Master Bettina W. sent us a message via the Patreon messaging system. Hey guys, great to have you back covering a really big prestige show. Loved your podcast for a pretty good first episode of True Detective Season 4. Although I've seen all the previous seasons, I'm with John. At some point during this episode, I felt kind of lost too. I think this is the first time ever that I was wondering if a show is doing too much world building. Little face emoji. But I'm willing to trust that it's going to pay off, and I'm totally on board for the ride. Then she goes on. So that's other folks. I think were feeling the same on ramp up.
I certainly was. Yeah. That was my biggest complaint with the first episode, and I think it's largely been resolved in episode 2. So I'm going to say I'm much more positive on episode 2, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season now.
Right. All right. She says, David, I can't believe how much work you're putting into this coverage, but I love it. Yeah, I'm having fun. Actually,
I can't believe it either. Yeah. You showed me the detective notebook, David, and I said, if you really want to do this, I'm not going to stop you. But my God, you're putting a lot of work into this.
I'll tell you what it is. The detective notebook works. It's my process. And I've been wanting to do this. I remember back in Andor, I was like, God, I got to keep track of these characters and stuff like that. And there was I had a desire to do this. This was already sort of a creative vision within me. So this is just me getting to do that. And it's as part of my process, I get to capture these clues and then put them into a framework and have them accessible. Then I thought, well, why not share this? And I've been having fun balancing visual information versus how could you just see something really quickly and go, oh, okay, I get it. Right. Like that visual communication style stuff. And using this platform, this Notion platform to balance all of that has been actually a really fun creative endeavor for me.
I think you have fully developed into the Charlie Day meme where he has all the red string up and
exactly.
He has all the papers on the wall. I think that's
what's the other one with all the math symbols swirling by?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. But no, that person's confused. Charlie Day, he knew exactly what he was talking about. And I think that's you right now.
Got it. Anyway, I can't believe how much your work you're putting into this coverage, but love it. Thanks so much for that. Not to miss out on all the Easter eggs and callbacks. I'm going to do a rewatch of season 1 before episode 2 airs. Wow.
A whole rewatch.
10 episodes.
I mean, not that I've not done something of that volume too many times, but I mean, it's coming from the guy who binged all of 20 years of Doctor Who to cover the anniversary specials,
or Star Wars, all the animated,
or Star Wars. Yeah. So I support this. I can't say anything about this. I support
the
this,
Lorehounds.
Bettina.
This is what we do. She concludes, finally, just one little ask. I'm wondering if you could shorten your intro housekeeping pre-game talk just a bit. I've noticed for some time now that this part keeps getting longer and longer, but that's really just a very, very, very minor critique. Overall, still absolutely loving what you do. Thanks again. Have a lovely week, Bettina. Thank you, Bettina, for being a lore master. And thank you for being part of the community, just somebody who's willing to write in and share your thoughts and especially the critique, because we take that very seriously. And we actually tried to work to shorten it down a little bit even today. So.
It's a good note, because that's something that, David, you and I talk about once every couple of months, where man, because you know what it is? It's like every time we do something interesting, or we have an affiliate do something interesting, we're like, hey, we should mention this in the intro. And then it just gets tacked on until we have to go, okay, where were we at 2 months ago? And how do we get back there?
Right. And then for episode 1, we didn't do a pregame podcast. So all of that background on the season and our personal histories with it and our plans and stuff, all of that got front loaded into episode 1 as well. Like we could have done a 15 or 20 minute pod on that just as a standalone to prep everybody for what was coming. So that's a good reminder when we have big marquee shows to do that and not load the first episode.
Yeah. But 'tis the busy season, as they say. All right, I'm taking over now. Nicole B left a message on our Patreon post and said, regarding Leah's age, when Liz gets the call from the other mom, she states that the girlfriend Sherry is in Leah's class. So I would assume Leah is still in high school, but maybe it's a small combined school and Leah is within a couple of years of age. Yeah, I think I think they're either in the same grade or 1 grade apart. I think that's perfectly fine. I just don't know why they had to phrase it that way. It was very strange. But good catch. So maybe it was resolved and we were just speculating on something stupid from the first episode.
And we got confirmation this episode that she is 17. So and that her girlfriend is this isn't Leah predating on somebody. This is a very mutual relationship. These two young folks are very much into each other.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Lore Master Peter OH on the Discord says, David mentioned the show The Terror on the podcast on account of the polar bear connection. In addition, indigenous people missing their tongues is another shared feature between these two shows.
Yeah, I had forgot about that. That's a good call, Peter. There's definitely some tongue related things in that show. Did you ever watch The Terror?
No, I don't think I've heard of it.
Okay, it was going to be another anthology series where each season was going to be a story from, the mists of time, from the annals of lost history. And the first one had Jared Harris and Tobias Mendes, and it was about a ship that gets trapped in the ice. An old wooden sailing ship, like I believe they were exploring or something. And then all kinds of bad stuff happens because they're jerks and they, do jerky things. And so terror happens involving a polar bear. So really good. Second season I didn't ever watch the second season and it got really bad reviews. And then I'm not sure where the franchise went away, but it would be a Fargo-y kind of thing, but for horror, terror related stuff. So it was a good idea, but It seems like season 2, they pulled the plug on the idea afterwards. So
we'll see. It sounds like back. From Wikipedia in January 2020, they said they're considering a third season. So I guess that didn't happen. Didn't happen. Also, if you didn't know, a few things happened in the world after that made TV production pretty hard.
Exactly. So maybe they just shelved it. So
yeah, I think it just died in the COVID purge.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Peter OH, for writing in.
And he's also a lore master.
I know. I introduced him as a lore master. I used the Sir title as the Sir Peter OH. Well, Sir C Drive, our old friend, sent in a Word doc with a ton of great research that covers some of the inspiration for the show and also putting down some serious internet points on a working theory about what's happening. So here we go. Issa Lopez says she was inspired by the Dyatlov incident and Mary Celeste incident. Dyatlov Pass. I've watched a TV documentary about this before, so I knew about this. The team at Dyatlov Pass burst out of their tents and hauled ass, running in the snow, seemingly horrified by something. It reminded me of how the Tsalal team was frozen in a state of horror. All right, I buy that.
Yeah, it's one of those mysteries where they're like, okay, we found the bodies, but we don't know how this, we're not asking the right questions, and they never figured out what exactly went down.
They didn't have Liz Danvers asking the right questions.
Right. There's some also great commentary by Issa Lopez in different interviews and stuff where this is a ghost, the Tsalal Research Station itself is that ghost ship. It is the Nostromo from the first Aliens movie, this giant, thing moving through space, whatever. This is all of those genres. She's very cognizantly bringing all of those together into this thing, using those as inspiration.
Cool. C Drive continues with Mary Celeste, says, never knew anything about this, so went down a rabbit hole. Found abandoned sailing aimlessly off the coast of Azores Islands.
The Azores. Yeah.
The Azores Island in December with 3 feet of water sloshing in its hold. No signs of fire or violence, but an orderly departure using the ship's lifeboat. Left all the food or ample provisions remained, at least. It reminded me of how Tsalal team left with sandwiches and open beer still out. Yeah, that's a good call. That's a good call, too. I love these connections here.
Yeah.
Next up is prions. I don't know what this is, but there's a Wikipedia entry. Thank you.
Yeah, I pasted a little bit of
you
thing so you can
put it in.
Yeah, so you can kind of summarize this a little bit.
Okay. Well, I haven't read it before, so I'm not going to summarize it. I'm just
okay. Well, a prion is a misfolded protein that can induce other misfoldings of normal variants of the same protein and trigger cellular death. Prions cause prion diseases known as transmissible spongiform encephalitis that are transmissible, fatal neurodegenerative diseases in humans and animals.
next week on The Last of Us. All right. Reddit poster screenshotted the scientist bio for Lucas Marins. I knew someone would do this. From there, they go to metalloproteins and then draw a line to prions. The prion talk includes how contamination can be through eating contaminated meat.
So
Okay. And they were eating meat sandwiches, right?
Right. So when Peter is going through the bios, you can screenshot, and there's written bios for all of these different people. And so for Lucas Marins, in the in his bio, it talks about the research that he did or in the past, like who this guy is. And so that's where they're pulling this stuff up. So people are reading these and pulling the clues out.
Yeah. All right. So C Drive continues. As a deer hunter, I know there's a chance to eat bad meat. Prion disease is called chronic wasting disease, and it causes lesions in the brain. Also known as zombie deer disease, in all caps. We have an indigenous caribou hunter in the show.
Right.
Yeah. But they don't go out to buy groceries. So who's bringing it in? Is it one of the workers from the fish plant?
Well, this is where some of these theories are going. Is like, what is there something going on with the mine? Is there something going on with the research station? Did it get out into the populations of animals, fish, into the caribou,
right,
et cetera, et cetera?
Symptoms include behavioral changes, mood changes, and dementia. So again, the scientist acting weird and saying weird shit. Maybe the shadow figure or any hallucination from dementia. Yeah, I'm liking this a lot because we now even C Drive had not seen this current episode before writing this, and there's even more stuff telling us that Clark was acting weird.
Exactly.
Lastly, C Drive writes about recent events and shows. The Last of Us had an ancient pathogen, of course. Although I wouldn't call that an ancient pathogen. That's just something out of nature, right?
Yeah, that's just a normal that evolved.
Yeah,
it was a fungus that evolved. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's, fungi. Well, anyway.
You're a fun guy.
That's what the girl mushroom said to the guy mushroom.
All right, it's getting late.
We're getting punchy.
All right. During the coronavirus pandemic, scientists started talking about how glacial melt could unlock ancient viruses. Yeah.
There you go.
Scary. The Salal core samples. Ice samples are used by climatologists to study ancient weather and climate conditions. Also, soil samples, like if a volcano erupted ash, etc. I know as a past petroleum engineering student taking geology, sedimentary rock courses, and dealing with soil core samples in the laboratory is just like these ice core samples. That's interesting. That's cool. I wonder if that's part of their research here. A scientist reading the data on the whiteboard seems to reach a scary conclusion and circles data and puts exclamation marks. Then apparently writes, "We are all dead." The data seems to be from the ice samples because the columns are date and depth, time as it relates to core depth. It's like they're literally reading back in time, and time is a flat circle, and bad things will happen again and again and again. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah. So good working theory here that C Drive has, and then this prion stuff, and absolutely things to keep an eye on. And I think this is a true detective thing too, where there's a mundane thing. Yeah, there's just a killer in the closet with a knife, and then there's this weird cosmic, supernatural, weird fiction thing over the top. That so you can, depending on what your point of view is that you can see that killer in the closet as being inspired by the ancient evil that lives in other places. So this could be a very mundane, straightforward, thing. Is the mind doing something, or is Salal doing something? And did Salal do something that then released something, et cetera, et cetera?
Right.
So
it's cool.
Yeah. Good theories.
It's cool. All right.
Again, truedetective@thelorehounds.com, or, on our Patreon or on our Discord, send us messages. I would love to put out a call to anyone who has lived or worked or spent any significant time in the Arctic Circle or even in the Antarctic. Let us know what, things are really like out there. I know we have some Nordic country listeners. I'm not sure how Alaska fares on our thing, but yeah, anyone who's up in that region where the time variance of the sun rising and setting alters, human behavior significantly. It would be really interesting to hear some points of view about that.
Yeah, that would be very cool.
Okay. Well, let's wrap it up, I guess, huh?
I think so. I think we're done cooking here.
Yeah, we are cooked. I am cooked. Let's just blow past a lot of our outro stuff. Properly Howard movie review are on a little break, but as soon as Severance is up for season 2, we're going to be, the 4 of us are going to be covering that. And Elysia is busy trying to get Beacon 23 wrapped up and doing some stuff for Dune and some other things she's prepping. Shout out to the Lorehounds, or do we want to talk a little bit about our upcoming schedule?
Let's do the upcoming schedule first.
Okay. You want to lead off?
Sure. We are doing a lot of stuff coming up. I know that you're going to be talking about Masters of the Air, I think, with Brandon now. We got him screener, yep. So where you two are going to do that, because I am not that interested in that series, to be honest. It's just not my thing. I think it'll be good, but it's not my thing. Brandon and I are going to be covering Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is a really great game, and they're coming out with a sequel for it next month. I know that the 7 seems intimidating if you don't know the series. It's an anthology series, just like True Detective. So you don't have to play the other 15 entries. You can just play the one. It's really good. Anyway, we're also, of course, doing True Detective every week. We are about to do a Fargo episode. If you like this show, you'll definitely like Fargo, I think. And
we just wrapped up season 5, just ended.
Yep.
So
we got the usual Silmarillion stories. Earthsea's coming back in February, and plenty of stuff down the line coming.
Rogue One.
Yep. Live watch this weekend. Well, yep. It would have already happened by the time
it comes
out. So there'll be a podcast out. Time's a flat circle. Great. Tell me about our lore masters, David.
Samartian, Mark H., Michael G., Michelle E., David W., Brian P., Nick W., SC, Peter O.H., Bettina W., Adam S., Nancy M., Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H., Sarah L., Gareth C., Eric F., Matthew M., Sarah M., DJ Miwa, Andra B., Kwang Yu, Deadeye Jedi Bob, Nathan T., Alex V., Aaron T., Sub-Zero, Aaron K., Dally V21, and always last but never least, Adrian. Thank you all so much. They are our lore masters, our top tier patrons who help really keep our podcast wheels on the car and make sure that we have a healthy podcasting community. And to all of our Patreon supporters, thank you so very much. We could not do this. We cannot do these late night recordings where we're stumbling over ourselves to wrap up without you. So thank you. We dearly appreciate it.
Very much so. David, it's been a pleasure. I think we will definitely be talking for a similar length of time next week, because this show has a lot to go into.
And from what I saw on the next on from last week, I forgot to plug one thing too, where we kind of have a live chat thing happening on our Discord. So if you can second screen, if you're into the second screen thing and you want to oogle and ogle at the episode as it's live showing, we have a channel set up in our Discord for that. So I'll be there next week. But from what I saw in the next week on, they got a lot yet planned for us. So it's going to be a wild ride.
All right, David, I will see you next week.
Good night.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.